Your Fitness Business Podcast Snapshot. What is Cumulative Advantage? Where does momentum come from? What is momentum driven by? And mentors, the change in this concept. All of that and more coming up in today's episode. Thank you for listening to the fitness industry's leading fitness business podcast for owners and managers. The Fitness Business Podcast strives to provide a weekly educational platform for our listeners. The variety of international guests are here to share their expert advice, knowledge, and tips with you, our FBP family. This month's interviews are brought to you by Discover Strength.
At Discover Strength Franchising, we know you want to own a thriving fitness business. We believe you should be able to do work that you are passionate about while also making a great living. Imagine owning a distinguished fitness business backed by a market-tested business model where efficient 30-minute strength workouts are provided to your clients by expert, educated personal trainers. Here's how to get started. Head to discoverstrengthfranchise.com and fill out the contact form. Set up a pre-qualification call with our franchise team. Join us for a mutual discovery day. So head to discoverstrengthfranchise.com so you can start falling in love with your work again.
Thank you for joining me for episode number 353 from the Fitness Business Podcast. I'm your host, Dory Nugent, and today my guest is author Mark Schaefer. I'm excited to announce that this is Mark's third time being a guest as we celebrate the release of his new book, Cumulative Advantage: How to Build Momentum for Your Ideas, Business, and Life Against All Odds. Mark Schaefer, welcome back to the Fitness Business Podcast.
Oh, I've been looking forward to it all week. Nice to be with you, Dory.
The name of your book is Cumulative Advantage: How to Build Momentum for Your Ideas, Business, and Life Against All Odds. So I'd like to just get started and ask you right off the bat to quickly explain the definition of cumulative advantage. And do you believe in this statement?
Sure. So the reason I wrote this book is that I see that it's getting increasingly difficult to stand out in this world. For every business, for every entrepreneur, it's how can we be heard? How can we be seen and discovered in this overwhelming world of noise? And it led me to research on momentum. So how do we get to that next level when we feel like we're buried? And it led me to this research that started in 1968 and a very famous paper that was written by a fellow named Robert Merton. And as the research progressed, this became known as work on cumulative advantage. And the idea behind this term is that if you start out with a small advantage over other people in your field, that over time, if you play your cards right, that gap between you and your competitors will continue to increase with unstoppable momentum over time. So the most famous example from the world of sociology is a bank account. Let's say that one person starts out in their life with $1,000 and another person has $10,000. So the difference is $9,000. But over 10 years, if both of them get the same interest rate, 5%, the difference will be $15,000, and that gap will never close over time. Now, that initial advantage doesn't have to be money. It could be education. It could be really living in a safe home. It could be an idea that you have. It could be a person that you meet. It could even be a random moment. As I show in the book, a lot of momentum is available to any of us because a lot of momentum starts with random events. So that's the basic idea of cumulative advantage.
Okay, good explanation. You state in your book that momentum comes from everyday experiences.
Yes.
How so?
Well, there was research that was created by a man named Franz Johansson, which really inspired me. He wrote a book called The Click Moment. That sounds like a book about SEO, but it's a lot more interesting than that. He contends that every successful person, every successful business starts with some random event. And he really does a good job explaining it. One of the most famous stories that I love is Nike, how Nike got started. It started by this track coach. And back in the day, track shoes had metal spikes on the bottom, which is probably not a very safe thing to combine with teenage athletes. And he was sitting at breakfast one morning, and his wife pulled a waffle out of a waffle iron. And he looked at that thing, and without saying a word, he ran back to the high school chemistry lab, got some latex, poured it in the waffle iron, and pulled out this thing. He thought that could be the bottom of a shoe. And that's how Nike got started, by this observation, this random event, watching his wife make waffles. And so almost every successful person, almost every successful business starts with something like that.
I love that. That's a great analogy. I've never heard that story before.
Yes.
In chapter 4, you talk about the seam. You define the seam as an undefended or underdefended opportunity. My question to you is, why is momentum driven by speed, time, and space of a seam?
Well, it's a new way to look at strategy. And most people who grew up in business thought that strategy is a 5-year plan and a 50-page document. But today, life moves so fast and the world moves so fast. It's really about finding an undefended seam. Another way to think about it is a fracture in the status quo. It's some shift that happens that opens up an opportunity. And if it's an opportunity where your talents, your passions, your ideas fit, then you burst through that seam with all of your might and all of your power and just go as long as you can making money. So this is a very interesting idea to think about now, because we're experiencing the biggest fracture in the status quo any of us hopefully will ever experience in our lifetimes. It's called the pandemic. Everything is shifting. How we work, how we work out, how we entertain ourselves, how we learn, how we connect with other people. It's all being shifted. It's all being changed. And so I predicted last March, when the pandemic started, that we would have more startups than any time in history. And that has come true. Yes, we've had a lot of business failures. It's been a tragedy, but we've actually had more startups than failures, because there are so many shifts in what people need right now. So it's not picking one thing and just going as long as you can. It's always being aware of how you can apply your talents, your resources to a shift that's happening right now, not next year, but right now. And you go for it as fast as you can.
I agree. So many great opportunities have opened up during the pandemic with just new ideas and new business concepts. So I always like to say there's a little silver lining to this pandemic. You do a lot of case studies in your book. And as you learned through these case studies, timing seems to be everything when it comes to the success of an idea. You suggest that rather than leaving the timing to chance, put the ideas through a worthiness test. Could you please explain to our listeners out there what the worthiness test is?
Well, I really struggled with this part of the book because I went down this deep rabbit hole trying to figure out, well, what do you do about timing? Because if you enter a seam a little too early or you enter a seam a little too late, then it's not going to work. You're going to be blocked out. So is there any way to really make a prediction? And of course, there are some logical ways. You can do research. And the beauty of the world that we live in today is it doesn't take much risk It doesn't take a lot of resources to test an idea. We can do a lot of that online. I mean, 30 years ago, if you wanted to build a new business or test a new idea, chances are you'd have to build something. You have to build a prototype with machinery in your garage or something. Today, you don't need to do that. You can make a 3D model, put it out on some crowdfunding site or crowdsourcing site and test your ideas. So there are a lot of good ways to test ideas today, but there's nothing that's foolproof. There's still risk embedded in any new venture. And so what I do is I walk the reader through this idea of worthiness to make sure you're giving yourself the best chance to succeed. And what I do through this worthiness section of the book, this worthiness test, is to challenge entrepreneurs and innovators that they're really thinking everything through with their idea. One of the biggest problems I see as a consultant, and I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs. I have a place on my site where anybody could sign up for an hour of my time and just talk about an idea they have or a business problem that they have. So I get businesses from all over the world with all kinds of crazy ideas. And the biggest problem I see is that innovators or entrepreneurs are so tied to their idea. They're so in love with their idea. They can't really see what the customer value is going to be. Is your product worthy of a customer? That's a big, big question. Is this all about you and your passion and your dream? Or is someone really going to buy this thing? That is a very important question to ask. You also need to think about, is it worthy of the sacrifice, starting a new business or launching a new product? It's a sacrifice. It's going to take a lot of work over a long period of time. Is this something worth fighting for? So those are some of the questions I ask in the book to get people focused, to give themselves the best chance of hitting the seam in a good way.
Well, I think this is great timing because, right before the pandemic hit, just tying it into the fitness industry was at an all-time high. It was booming. And there are so many young professionals out there looking to start their own, franchise or maybe just small private personal training studio or group fitness studio. And now it's like, I think they're starting to think twice, like, is it going to be profitable and is it going to work, just because people are a little nervous about being together in a smaller space. So I like the worthiness test. I think that's perfect. Let's talk about mentoring relationships. Why should we regard mentoring relationships in an entirely new light?
Well, again, the book is about creating momentum. If you're stuck, if you're sort of plateauing out, then what can we do to get to that next level? And I think one of the best ways and one of the fastest ways to create momentum is by reaching out and reaching up to somebody who can help you. But in this part of the book, I challenge the reader to reimagine the traditional definition of mentoring, which is this is a long-term relationship between a teacher and a student. And I just think that is anachronistic. I think it doesn't fit our times. Today, if you need to learn something, you can go to YouTube. You don't need a mentor. What you need a mentor to do is to open up new doors, to bounce ideas off of, to get them to introduce you to new people who can take you to that next level. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a long-term relationship. So I think this is a very important part of the book. I think it's a challenging and very helpful part of the book to help you think through, who is the right person that can help me? How do I identify that person? How do I connect to that person in a way so that it will be mutually beneficial? What are some of the strategies? What are some of the expectations? What should that relationship look like? So there's a lot of actionable ideas in that chapter to rethink how mentoring can really help and what it means in the environment that we're in today.
I think this was my favorite chapter in the book. because I struggle with the mentoring piece myself, as far as some days I say to myself, I feel like I've never had a mentor. And then other days I'm like, oh, wait, no, I've had a couple mentors. And I just liked how you redefined what mentoring is. I thought it was very relevant, like you said, in this day and age.
Thanks, Dory.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite one, but I struggled with that. I struggle with that one. So perfect. Now, could you tell us a little bit, what do you mean by how the certainty of business uncertainty can be used to our advantage?
Well, I think, again, we're sort of talking about timing here. Mm-hmm. And the thing that we know is that any new idea, any new venture is going to be there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. And this last part of the book talks about nurturing momentum even when things go bad, because things are going to go bad. There's always going to be a problem. We need to avoid what the author Jim Collins calls the doom loop, which means when things go wrong, you start panicking and you start reaching for whatever that can, bring in a little money. And I'm not saying that in a crisis like the pandemic that we shouldn't be aware of the circumstances, that we shouldn't be open to changing and morphing and pivoting. But we can't forget what brought us there. So let's go back to the beginning. Momentum begins with an initial advantage. There's something about you, this spark that's special, that led you to be successful, that led you to create momentum. And you have to be really careful about pivoting in a way where you lose sight of that advantage, where you lose sight of that spark, why people love you, why they keep buying something from you. And there's case studies in the book where people, they went wrong or they almost went wrong and they stuck to their path even through hard times. And ultimately, they became very, very successful. I think that's a great lesson for the pandemic. What we need to be doing now is maybe getting in touch with our advantage to sort of reflect on what makes us special, and then think about how do we apply those talents and that advantage in these circumstances. So you mentioned lots of people who wanted to create entrepreneurial spaces in fitness. Well, there's probably more opportunity than ever if people are locked in apartments. You just have to find a way to do it through a computer. People are longing for that. I recently spoke to a brand manager for Adidas, or if you're outside America, Adidas. And he said, the pandemic has reinvented sport. That's no small thing. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a fracture in the seam. That is an opportunity. So how do you help sport be reinvented if it's taking place, in a house, in a garage, in an apartment someplace? You can be part of that.
It's a good way to look at it. Now, I know, Mark, writing a book is no small feat, even though you have written many. But I'm going to ask you to look at this new book, and is there one chapter that you could either deem, because it's really hard, we have 20 minutes. It's hard to get through an entire book and talk about an entire book in 20 minutes. But is there a favorite chapter, or one chapter that maybe you found very challenging? Like, do you just kind of have a certain connection with one specific chapter in your book?
That is easy to answer. So it took me 3 months to write the last chapter, because what happened, Dory, is whenever you immerse yourself in a project to write a book, you become a student. It's almost like getting a master's degree. You research and study and write for 2 years, and it changes you. And one of the things that I learned, and it had a profound impact on me, was that momentum is not equally applied to every segment of our society. We're all surfing the crest of a wave that started a long time ago. Advantage builds on advantages, and many of us have lots of advantages that have led us to where we are today. Lots of opportunities, lots of random events, lots of mentoring opportunities that led to our success. Some of us are riding a towering wave, a Bill Gates size wave. Others are riding maybe a blue collar wave. We have to fight a little harder for momentum. And some people in society are being pulled under by the undertow. And what I realized is a book like this, by its nature, is elitist because it assumes you have the money to buy the book, the time to read the book, the resources to take action with the many ideas that are in the book. And so I was frustrated. And this came out at the end of the book. It was the most difficult chapter I've ever read, the riskiest chapter I've ever read. And more than one person has said, when I finished your book, I cried. Because I talk from a very, very personal experience of what has to come next and what all of us can learn about not just applying momentum to our lives, but perhaps creating a spark of initial momentum for other people. It's something that all of us can do. And we can't solve world hunger. We can't solve poverty problems or redistribution of wealth or income in our country. But we do all have the power to send the elevator back down and just take one positive step to help another person in their life, in their career. Maybe it's their college students or something like that. So that's the call to action at the end of the book. And it's had a very powerful impact on people.
It's interesting that you picked that chapter because when I read the book, I felt that the last chapter was probably your most, like the imagery of your chapter and the most, I don't know, I just thought the words that you use, you talk about the crest of the wave. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I just felt like that chapter painted a very, very visual picture. So I just felt there was a little difference from your last chapter to the other ones were just like more manufactural. And I maybe because the other ones were filled with case studies, but I will say lots of imagery in the last and final chapter.
Well, thank you. I think it was a bit of a different style. If you enjoy Malcolm Gladwell, most of my books are sort of in the Malcolm Gladwell style, where there's good numbers and good research behind everything that I write, but I have entertaining stories to go with it. But the last chapter really was sort of an essay, kind of a personal essay. And so, I appreciate you noticing that. And it was hard to write. It was very difficult to write, but people seem to appreciate the work.
Get your pen ready now for Keep Me's Fit Bizpiration.
What are 3 takeaways from your new book for a person with a dream that's ready to take flight?
Well, number one, I would say this is a book of tremendous hope. It shows that you don't need any special abilities. You don't need $1 million. You don't need Ivy League school education to create momentum. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. It doesn't matter where you've come from, how dark your life has been. There is an opportunity for us all to create momentum. Number 2, I think that there's nothing in this book that's not accessible and doable by anyone. You don't need any sort of special resources. You just need to be aware of the pattern. Once you read this book, I guarantee you'll never see the world the same way again. You'll start seeing this pattern repeat itself in people and in businesses. And you'll say, yes, I see how this momentum was created. The third thing would be the importance of discipline, that there is no overnight success. There really isn't. Even creating momentum does not happen all at once. It's a function of grit, of determination. You're going to be pushed down. You need to get back up and keep going. So the idea of discipline is very, very important. Doing the things you have to do every day to keep that momentum going. If you can withstand that pain of discipline, then you won't feel the pain of disappointment because you'll know you've done everything you've done to make yourself successful and build momentum for your career and your business.
Keep Me, Smarter member retention. KeepMe.ai.
It's time to get back to our show. Cumulative Advantage, How to Build Momentum for Your Ideas, Business, and Life Against All Odds is Mark's new book. This is book number what for you?
9.
Number 9.
Number 9, yeah.
Okay. Is there going to be a number 10?
I don't know. I hope that there is. I love writing books. It's such an intellectual challenge. But whenever I write a book, there's only one thing that goes through my mind, and it's this: I will never let you down. If you spend the time reading my book, it will be interesting and relevant and timely and entertaining on every page. There's no fluff, and it has to solve a practical problem. If I can't do that, I won't write a book. So it's got to be a big idea, and I've got to be 100% committed to it, because my only goal will be it has to be better than the last book. So I hope that there's another one, but I don't know right now.
All right. Well, certainly if there is a number 10, you will be back again here on the
that would be
Business
great.
Podcast.
That'd be great.
Well, thanks again, Mark, for your time. We greatly appreciate it. And we'll make sure that we get the link to that book on our show notes so that our listeners out there, I know after listening to you speak for the last 20 minutes, they're going to be clicking away to purchase your book. Well, I couldn't seem to get a straight answer from Mark as to whether book number 10 will come to life or not. But I guess this is where we'll say time will tell. Well, it's always such a pleasure to have Mark join us on the podcast. And in case you missed Mark's previous episodes, you can head on over to our website and search episode number 114 and 237. It is now time for a word from OneFitStop.
OneFitStop is modern fitness studio software built for the growing multi-location studio, providing scheduling, client management, programming, payment collection tools, and more that will set your business up to grow. To find out more, go to onefitstop.com or click on the link in today's show notes.
Quickfire 5.
Here is next week's guest, Pete McCall from All About Fitness, answering the Quickfire 5 questions. Pete, it is time for Quickfire 5. We can't wait to hear all of your answers. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's rock.
All right, first one. What was a business or life lesson you learned from one of the jobs you did when you were younger?
Well, when I was in college, I worked as a bar back in an extremely busy bar on the East Coast in the Georgetown area of Washington, D.C. We were slammed all night long. It taught me teamwork, it taught me how to hustle, and it taught me how to pay attention to the numbers.
Okay, favorite one there is hustle. I love that one. All right, number 2, if you were not doing what you're doing now, what do you think you would be doing?
Oh, I hate to say this, but I'd be probably working in politics. I worked in politics before I got in the fitness industry. I worked up on Capitol Hill. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. I'd either be working in politics on some kind of progressive issue, or I'd be teaching in high school. I'd be the cool high school history or government teacher. One of those two.
I like that a lot. Okay. All right, future congressman, when you write your autobiography, what will be the title?
Well, I have a title I know I'm going to use, but I'm not going to put it out there because I like it so much. But what I will say is what I would like to write about is my life in fitness.
Okay. All right. Well, we won't steal your title, so we don't know. So we're all good. We're all good. All right. How about a book? Could you recommend our FBP family a book?
Well, the first book I'd recommend, and a client gave this to me years ago. I don't know if that meant I was doing a bad job as a personal trainer, but in all reality, he just finished his MBA program. And the book is Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. It's all about service sales and service marketing, because marketing a service like fitness is much different than marketing a tangible good. Now, for the fitness geeks out there who want to learn more about exercise, I highly, highly recommend Super Training by Verkhoshansky and Mel Siff, the late Mel Siff. Super Training goes through the entire Russian methodology of exercise programming and exercise program design. And the Russians were the best by far in terms of understanding exercise physiology.
Okay, so we got 2 books for one. We'll take that. That's amazing. And finally, Pete, I need you to give us your best sales pitch why our listeners should tune in next week for your episode.
Well, I have been teaching fitness education since all the way back when flip phones were popular, since 2002. I have worked with some of the top health clubs and certification organizations and equipment companies around the world to help them understand how to develop the content and programs to make fitness professionals be more successful. Education is a key component of the fitness sales process. Education leads to both competence and competence, and that builds confidence among your staff. So I'm really looking forward to sharing the insights on how education can drive success for both operators and fitness professionals alike.
Okay, perfect. So everybody out there listening, come back next week. Pete McCall is going to be here, and he's going to talk about staff training boosts retention. The Fitness Business Podcast has an announcement, but I will let Steven Steinberg from Raw Athletics tell you all about it. Hey, Fitness Business Podcast family, I have a special guest with us today. It is Steven Steinberg from Raw Athletics. Welcome, Steven.
Hi, Dory. Thanks for having me.
Steven, I'm excited to hear exactly what Raw Athletics is.
Yes, thank you. So Raw Athletics is our company. VaporFresh is our brand. And the goal of Raw Athletics is to help athletes of all levels live a healthier lifestyle, because we believe a healthy athlete is a better performing athlete. So right now we're going after that mission with our brand VaporFresh, which manufactures stronger, safer, greener cleaning products specifically for the sports and fitness industry. So we have things like disinfecting gym wipes that are used by small studios all the way up to nationwide gym chains. We have laundry detergents for active lifestyles. We have botanically based cleaning sprays for sports pads and stuff like that.
All right, so lots of great, safe, eco-friendly products. Perfect.
Yes.
So here is the big news. We have a big announcement, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Yes. So we're really excited to announce that we're going to become a sponsor of the Fitness Business Podcast. And I think we've all seen throughout the past year how difficult it's been to run any sort of business in the fitness industry, and any resource out there to help the business owner is very much needed. And you guys are the best in the business. So we're excited to be a sponsor and an industry supplier.
Well, welcome aboard. It is a great family to be a part of. And all of our listeners and viewers out there, you're going to hear a lot more from Steven and about Raw Athletics sprinkled throughout our podcast. So thank you for becoming a sponsor, and we look forward to having you a part of the Fitness Business Podcast family. Head on over to our show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com to connect with today's guest, Mark Schaefer. Next up, a message from our founding partner, Active Management.
Hi, FBP family. It's JT from Active Management, the founding partner of the Fitness Business Podcast. Thanks to the amazing technology at our fingertips, we can now work with clients all over the world. But right now, you can join the free online Active Management Facebook community. It's an amazing group of people just like you. Sure, I share weekly resources, but it's the power of the community that you will experience that will make this your go-to Facebook group. Remember, it's free, fun, and inspirational. Go to facebook.com/groups/Active Management Community.
What you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.